We start the week talking about some things that happened last week. Makes sense, right?
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Welcome in. Nice to have you aboard on this Monday evening on my State of Mind. If I look a little tense, it's not about my guests, I promise you. It's about lifting a refrigerator after straining your upper whatever it is on the golf course. So stupid is as stupid does. Isn't that so stupid? Hopefully it's a temporary situation. Otherwise, hang up the golf clubs and do your shows like this for the rest of your life. It's tough getting old, isn't it? Brendan Bell is coming up a little bit later on. He's the state GOP chairman. We'll talk about some of his complaints today in a press release issued, and we'll talk about the national political scene, of course. I'm not sure who he's been kind of a chameleon here. I can't figure out who he's with. He shows up at all those Republican events. That's what chair people do. In the meantime, we're going to check out the situation in the city of Providence. We're going to skip the rundown this evening because we've got a lot going on, and Dan McGowan is going to join us here momentarily. So let's get right to it. Here's the headlines that really drive the conversation. The race to replace Councilman Jackson as majority leader is on, so the writing goes. And a second one here, so he's been jammed up for what seems like almost 3 years. Dan McGowan is the man when it comes to chronicling what happens in the city of Providence. Dan, thank you for stopping by again.
Thanks for having me.
We talked on the radio about this last week after you had written extensively about this Councilman Jackson's problems. In essence, give me the executive summary on what he's jammed up for.
Yeah, it all starts with his campaign finance violations, which have been well chronicled over the course of, 2 or 3 years now. He repeatedly did not file quarterly campaign finance reports with the Board of Elections. Board of Elections, had referred this to the Attorney General's office. Over the course of an investigation, the state police pulled some of his bank records. They also got a hold of this youth nonprofit track and field team that he founded 30 years ago, and discovered that he had been allegedly embezzling funds from that organization. So really this is a relatively minor campaign finance situation that morphed into an exposed a pretty big serious crime.
So let me ask you this. I mean, this guy is the majority leader, and the finance chairman, which is finance chairman.
Yeah, former finance chairman. He was on the finance committee, and then he resigned. Yeah,
finance committee, former finance chairman. Yeah. On the state level, former finance chairman is jammed up. We get these guys that can't handle their own personal financial situations, managing huge amounts of money on two different levels. The irony is, I don't even know if irony is the word. It doesn't make any sense.
You're right, and this is something that the council, I wrote for Ted Nesi's Saturday column. I wrote about, I covered extensively the rise to power for Councilman Jackson and Council President Aponte when they were putting together the team to become this leadership team. They sat in front of several council members, the people that they wanted on their team, and said, "We're going to fix our campaign finance violations. This is not going to hound us for years." In the council president's case, he did end up filing his reports, but Councilman Jackson carried this on through the end of February, and it led to what we're in now.
Are we looking at the beginning of an investigation in the city of Providence, or do you think this is just him?
It's hard to say. My gut, just based on reading the affidavit and the charges that he's accused of, I think it's probably just him. This is something that had been going on for a long time. 29 months, was the initial referral to the Attorney General's office. Nothing that I've heard has indicated that anyone else will be involved in this. Now, there's always that question of, will he talk about something that he knows going on? That can always happen, but I think this was probably an isolated investigation.
Well, the reason I ask is Louis Aponte, who is the council president, had this pathetic thing to say last week that we put up. He said, "I'm surprised and saddened." You're supposed to be surprised and saddened when somebody passes.
Right.
Okay. I'm surprised. Whatever happened to him? Surprised and furious. Well, this guy's got his own problems. Is his $47,000 of still money due to the Board of Elections for his fines that accumulated because he couldn't get his paperwork together still outstanding?
Still outstanding, yes. He says he's seeking a settlement.
It's not even comprehensible.
Right, yeah, well, he says he's going to seek a settlement from the Board of Elections, which is going to have a lot more attention now after all of these issues that have played out. He'll get a settlement. That's generally what happens, but you're right. He failed to do what he had to do as well, and now he's going to have to, one, pay a fine, but more importantly, forget what the fine's going to be. Let's say it's $10,000. The public screen, this is the council president, and then the majority leader had the same problem. It's a real black eye for the city of Providence.
A city that is struggling with finances.
That's right.
That needs adults in the room to make very, very difficult decisions, and to be a check to the mayor, who is brand new and showing signs of not really being fully capable of handling his own problems. Who
also, by the way, didn't.
I'm not talking about illegal problems. I'm just talking about managing the city's finances.
And the mayor as well. He remember, go back to 2014 when he's running for mayor. Very quick to cast the corruption word on, of course, Buddy Cianci, but even before that with Mike Solomon under a few different ethics investigations. Haven't heard much from him on Kevin Jackson. Haven't heard the calls for resignation. Same thing with the council president. Not calling for Jackson to resign from the council completely.
The whole community reaction to this is interesting. Of course, Artie Kaloyan, his lawyer, meaning Mr. Jackson's lawyer, I expect him to be talking about what kind of an incredible community servant it is.
Sure.
I mean, he's paid to advocate.
That's what he has to do, yeah.
But what are you reading the pulse of the community to be here?
It's interesting, Kevin. I've written several pretty scathing stories over the years about Kevin Jackson, generally involving either the Providence Cobras or his campaign finances, and inevitably, every time it happens, I get phone calls from former players on his team, people who know him in that Mount Hope neighborhood in the city of Providence, and people are always quick to defend him. When he ran for re-election in 2014, he faced a very, very tough competitor. It was a big write-in challenge from a lot of people. The only reason they wanted him out was because he was supporting Buddy Cianci, but there were 2,000 or 1,500 voters over there that supported him and were at every single debate and rally. He definitely has built up support in that community, and that's what I've heard in the days that followed. Constant phone calls, constant emails from people that, seem to want to stand by him right now.
Well, I would imagine that some mishap in your political dough, your campaign dough, is forgivable.
Sure.
Screwing around with the kids' money,
that's right,
is not.
That's right.
And it surprises me that you're getting this reaction. Do you think this is an orchestrated attempt to kind of slow you down journalistically, or do you think this really reflects the pulse of the community?
I think it's a fair question, and it's a question that I've always asked whenever I've covered Kevin Jackson, because it's surprising generally. Generally, the people, someone does something wrong, you get 10 people who want to say that other guy's doing something wrong too. This has been a little bit different. I feel like it could be coordinated. It would not surprise me if people behind Kevin Jackson wanted to get out their side of the story. Very, very easily. Yeah, that could be.
And he hasn't resigned, and I've deducted that he hasn't resigned mostly because he's got a benefit plan that goes along with his salary. Correct?
Well, could be the benefit salary. Could also be if you talk to Artie Kaloyan, the lawyer, he might say it hurts you when you hurt your defense if you immediately hang them up and say, you throw in the towel on your legislative position.
That is complete horse manure. that is absolute.
That's why I let you be the pundit.
Yeah, that is all due respect to Artie, that is complete nonsense.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with the legal case. What he would do afterwards would not even be admitted into a a legal case.
That's right.
Does he think we're born yesterday?
Right.
Or what
Public
kind of
perception, I suppose he may
for
say.
God's sake, it's just whatever happened to the responsibility of an elected official to actually be in a position to properly represent the people and not be jammed up like this?
Well, and by the way, both the health care and he continues to get paid his $18,000 annually, so that helps.
And of course, he was bringing grants home over the course. I mean, you guys, Target 12 did a piece on this a couple of years ago for the same track team. And now the city is going to review its grant process.
That's
in
right.
addition to the state reviewing
we have
its grant
all kinds
process.
of reviews of grants everywhere.
Yes. Well, it's It seems to be that moment in time. Do you see anything changing?
No, the only thing I would say, and I've looked through these things, all the time, particularly on the city side, obviously. Generally, these grants are going to very small. They're going to my little league teams and things like that. I would say I think that you'll probably see maybe more of an application process, stuff like that. But you're not going to see a halt on grants or anything like that.
All right. In Mr. Jackson's case, he next gets arraigned?
Yeah, no, he's
up?
been arraigned.
He's been
Yeah, he's back in court mid-July. I'm not sure if that's when he'll issue a plea or not, but I know he's back in court mid-July.
All right, we'll keep up to date. Thanks for your effort.
Thanks for having me.
When we come back, Brandon Bell, the GOP chairman, on the grant stuff, the Speaker of the House, his perspective, and then of course there's this race for the presidency. Stay with us.
I actually said to myself, I don't know if I need this. I just don't need it, don't want to be part of it. I then said, well, if I throw in the towel, I'm just capitulating to bad behavior.
The Speaker of the House, Dick Mattiello, with a human moment on Newsmakers this weekend when asked how he reacted to the former finance chairman Ray Gallison having to step down because of some unknown, formerly unknown at least, investigation. Go to WPRI.com and watch the entire Newsmaker show, and if you haven't seen it already, and decide for yourself whether or not that was a beautiful moment. I'm not so sure. Here's a headline of a press release that is the subject of our conversation right now. Brandon Bell is the state GOP chairman and issued this release today. Mattiello falls short on ethics. He would say that the Gallison situation, he being the speaker, had little or nothing to do with his recent review of the Ethics Commission status and a new reform bill that he put in. I certainly think it buoyed the acceleration, right? Welcome, nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well, Dan.
So you put that out today, and you have two major complaints, I think, if I read it correctly, about the Ethics Commission reform that the speaker is trying to execute. What are they?
So, first of all, just to your first point, is that Representative Gallison, former Representative Gallison, is the only reason that we're getting ethics oversight this year.
Well, reportedly he was working on it prior to this situation getting jammed up. But
so he hears he has an opponent at some point in February. He's got the tolls to deal with, and he has to do something. Now Gallison, now he really has to do something. So two major complaints. It's all going to be heard, this week, but
in hearings.
In hearings.
He's testifying on his own bill, by the way.
That ought to be some good theater. Two major issues. There's the 2/3 vote that's required for an ethics rule or regulation change, and there's the blackout period or the moratorium from the time of declaration until the day after the election. I think they're both ridiculous.
Well, let's handle them separately. So what the new legislation calls for is a 2/3 of the Ethics Commission panel, which in my old days, do you remember how many commissioners there are? My old guess is that there's like 7 or 8 of them at least, who
Fair question,
could be close to 9. And I'm sorry that I don't have that number, but 2/3 of that group has got to vote affirmatively to change policy for executing. You have a quarrel with that because?
I do. I mean, because it takes a majority to pass tolls, but we're going to make it more burdensome to have better government. It's ridiculous. There's no reason why, even if in the past they've passed regulation by supermajorities, that we should make it more difficult for them to regulate. This is how we got revolving door. This is how we got, by having a majority. There's no reason to make it so that it's 2/3, just to have better government.
Well, I think that's a fair point. The second one, I could agree with you more. So you understand, folks, we've got a There's 9 members. Thank you, Lexi. She just looked it up. So you need 7 of the 9, because it's not a third of a person or 2/3 of a person.
Right.
You need 7 of the 9 to say, yeah, we're going to change a policy. I think that is too much of a burden, especially because the Ethics Commission folks are politically appointed, even though they've shown signs of doing the right kind of stuff. As far as the 5-month blackout, so you understand, there's a June deadline to sign up to run for office in the fall. From that June deadline all the way through the fall, November, nobody can file an ethics complaint against a candidate. Well, we ought to stiffen the penalties for frivolous complaints against the candidates.
Absolutely. You know, in my private life, I'm an attorney. If I file a frivolous complaint, there's a rule that can penalize me, and I could be sanctioned for filing a frivolous complaint. Well, similarly, a member of the public can be fined, I believe, up to $5,000 for filing a frivolous complaint. So you better think before you file a complaint with the Ethics Commission. It's a deterrent, and it certainly, I would imagine, it certainly has worked. It's ridiculous that there should be a moratorium and people should be able to hide during that time frame behind potential corrupt conduct.
A couple of things that are going on here. The grant issue, we've got headlines on the grants that are constant here, grants misused. We've got the big boy grants, which are the community action grants that run anywhere from $25,000 to $500,000. And then we've got the little grants that I have a favorite name for that are $2 million in totality and come in $500 to $5,000 increments generally. Do you agree with me that both have got to go? Both programs have to go.
You know, and they need to be reformed without a doubt. I mean, one might say get rid of them altogether. One might say let's make them a specific appropriation, part of a line item, which goes into the line item veto.
Well,
reform.
I think we have audio on the grants. I believe we do, correct? With Speaker Mattiello? Yeah, Steve, can you run that other piece from Newsmakers? Just fire that up here for a second.
We are going to reform the community service grant so that we can ensure that they serve the public the way they've always been intended to serve the public, and that there are no conflicts of interest.
Yeah, okay, so there's a way to resolve that reform. Put them in the budget.
Put them in the budget.
He talks about Crossroads, Rhode Island, and the homeless, so we put them in. Fine. If there's a warranted expense, put $300,000 for Crossroads in the budget. If it gets voted up and down, it gets voted up and down. If there's a debate, there's a debate. What's the problem?
The problem is it would change the control of how they're doled out.
Right.
That's the issue. And the issue is that the Speaker has way too much power, as does the Senate President, with these grants.
Even more so with the smaller grants, which I think is really, I would like to say the mother's milk, but that's too much of a positive spin. It is the disease that permeates that house. Do you agree with me that the smaller grant program has got to be eliminated?
I think it has to be eliminated. I think it's corrupt on its face the way it's doled out. It's a campaign politicizing. Little League opening day 2 weeks ago at the Cranston West Little League, a senator stood up and said, I disagree with the Providence Journal and what they said about these grants. And he got a pat on the back and an applause. He's talking to a bunch of 4 to 11-year-olds about how money is doled out from our pockets.
But respectfully, I think your answer again is correct. I think you've been right on this issue. But your party hasn't been strong enough, and you've got members of your party that have taken the grants. They got to clean their acts up. You can't say one thing and do another.
Yeah, listen, I'm not going to speak, I'm certainly not here speaking on behalf of members of the the Senate or the Representative Caucus. However, it's the way they're doled out. I could say the Republicans have received certainly a smaller percentage of these grants, but I'm not going to defend
them. The Speaker last
because
week on the radio was trying to suggest that he was talking about it like somebody who's prejudiced and defends themselves against it. The average bigot will say something, well, I know a couple of black people. Well, I know a couple of Jewish people. It's just is terrible. It's when someone says something like that, that they've got a. Well, he was saying, well, I've given look at all the Republicans I've given grants to. So there was a tokenism involved in that attitude and that answer. You have too many members who have actually, said, yeah, we got to get rid of them, and on the backside they've been taking them. Are you going, as a chairman, just ask for a pledge that all of the state Republican representatives and senators just stop feeding at that trough?
That's something we've been talking about, and Pat Morgan started this conversation so many years ago, and fortunately she's up there advocating
and she took a whopper.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But she called out Gallison, 10 years ago, and coincidentally she shut her mic off 10 years later.
The line item veto is on. At least the conversation here, it's getting hearings. I'm guessing the Republican Party feels strongly about the line item veto.
Very strongly, very strongly. We think that either the Speaker just sounds clueless or he's complicit. It's one or the other. To say that we can't shift the balance of power because it'll mess the way things are, and things are working really well in government in Rhode Island is absolutely clueless, or he wants it to continue this way because clearly things are not going very well here. And the Gallison thing just highlighted it. And at this point
Well, I
in
would
time,
hope your delegation, again, we get strong on this. I mean, you guys have got a golden opportunity here, not to exploit, but to step in and lead.
I couldn't agree more.
I mean, there's some big mishaps right now.
I think we have a good election year coming up for us.
So you say. When we come back, we'll talk about that. Stay with us. This is a good update on what's happening with the presidential race.
It's a suicide mission.
Republican National Committee Chairman Reince Priebus issued this warning to fellow Republicans working behind the scenes to draft an independent candidate as an alternative to Donald Trump.
You're not only changing and throwing out 8 years of the White House, but you're also throwing out potentially generations on the Supreme Court.
An underground movement led by conservative figures Eric Erickson and Bill Kristol has intensified over the last few weeks.
I think this is such an exceptional year, it would be worth trying.
They're conducting polling, reaching out to donors, and courting potential candidates.
Here's what I know. Donald Trump is a phony, a fraud.
Sources involved in the effort say Mitt Romney reached out to Governor John Kasich and Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse. Though advisors to both say they're not interested, sources close to the conversations tell CBS News that the door hasn't closed completely.
The shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic. Either you're going to make it or you're not.
Others have floated another businessman turned reality TV star, Mark Cuban. He told the Washington Post, "I don't see it happening."
It's somewhere between reality and BS at this point.
Washington Post reporter Ed O'Keefe says mounting an independent bid risks further dividing the Republican Party.
It's going to take too much work, it's going to cost too much money, and all it's going to result in is becoming a footnote in American history as the person who tilted the race one way or the other to Trump or to Clinton.
That's reality and BS. I'm not sure where that goes. Give me a quick hit on who are you with, by the way?
I'm with the Republican Party.
So you're with Trump.
I'm going to be with Trump.
You get your fingers and toes crossed?
I do.
You do.
I do. I'm against Hillary.
You find it difficult. It's the worst quandary I think many Republicans have had in history, perhaps.
It's growing on me. I think that we all agree that Hillary's a flawed candidate. She's untrustworthy. She's lacks ethics, lacks accountability. She can't be elected.
Do you think Trump can win this state? I mean, the governor couldn't deliver Hillary over Bernie. Is that an independent streak possible here?
It's a big deal.
Gary Sasse, a prominent Republican, a friend of yours, I'm sure, was thinking about running for Congress in the 2nd District, but now bails on the idea that Trump might derail his momentum. What's he thinking there? I'll have to have Gary in, but what's he thinking?
Have Gary in, but on Congress, I'll stay away from that. When it comes to the General Assembly, I don't think it hurts us at all. Trump's tweets don't stop the fact that tolls were enacted. So I don't see how the two interrelate.
So tell me, how many seats do you think you could possibly pick up here on the Senate and House side, on the Republican side?
I think it's crucial that we grow our numbers on both sides. I'm equally as concerned as beating leadership. I want to stop this follow the leader mentality that's up there. And so I believe that the House Speaker and the Senate President need to be beaten.
So you're going to try to run somebody in those districts?
Yes.
You got candidates?
Yes.
Who are they?
There are some possible candidates that you know of. Steve Frias.
Is he running?
Steve Frias is seriously considering it. There are several others.
All right. So
yeah.
All right. Come back when the lineup's full.
Will do.
All right.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
You're off the hook on Trump. Final word when we come back. You know, amongst the stories that we learn about with Chris Dunn, who you see here going to his PC graduation, he's going to make anywhere between $11 and $24 million a year in the NBA. But he came back to show his younger siblings and family that you need a college education. One of the reasons he came back. Another good reason he did. Good for him. See you tomorrow on the radio. Bye.